my friend. Welcome to what's going to be a full class. This is a sequence that's been inspired by some one-on-one private work I'm doing with a specific client, and I just thought I'd record the practice in its entirety and be a bit more general about some things so that this practice applies to more people. And we're going to be focusing mostly around the torso and the shoulders. The idea here is to create a bit more space, feel less jammed up, all these kind of releasing sort of inputs. What we're going to use today, if you've got it, is a resistance band. I'm using one that's looped. This isn't the common one that you find, so most people will have an unlooped band, and it doesn't matter which one today you've got, but something that you can pull on and is going to extend and stretch. We're also going to use a plate. This is just for slippery, less traction, less friction. So sometimes maybe even a sock on your hand or something to slide around might be enough. We're going to use 2 blocks towards the end of the practice. Blocks are something that's firm-ish, so sometimes what I suggest is rolling a blanket around some textbooks, just something for a sense of being firm but also soft to lie into. And then if you've got one, we'll also use a bolster. My suggestion for home practice, if you don't have a bolster, is to raid your couch cushions, the kind of structural cushions of your couch. They usually do the job, or sometimes I'll put multiple pillows in one pillowcase. So you're just looking for something firm. Okay. How we're going to get started is just by isolating the space that we'll be focusing on. You're going to take your resistance band and just find yourself sitting comfortably. I'm going to sit on a block for a little bit of height. The idea is just to be able to kind of feel soft through the hips, so sometimes having your knees lower than the hips is useful. If you're more comfortable sitting back on the heels or with your legs long, that's great. This resistance band isn't ideal for what we're doing because, as I said, it is looped, but I'll make it work. All you need is something to wrap around your torso. So a scarf or a yoga strap works just as well for what we're doing. All you'll do is take your piece of equipment, I'll just say resistance band, and you're going to wrap it around the back body. This one's quite tight, so it might fling back. And the idea here is to figure out where you like the feeling of the band, but somewhere below the shoulder blades, maybe in terms of the brow line or the nipple line, and you can adjust and play as you go. The feedback is that it will be hugging around the back and the sides of your ribs. If I had a longer strap, I'd cross them over. This one's quite tight, so I'm just going to sit with hands like this. But if you've got the ability to cross over and hold opposite side of strap and opposite hand, that's quite soft and nice for the shoulders. So now you've got some feedback about where you could begin to direct your breath into. And directing the breath is the goal here. As we breathe a bit deeper, we start to move the ribs a bit more mindfully. So how I'm going to begin is thinking about breathing into the back space, the place where the resistance band is wrapping around behind the shoulders. And nearly what I'm doing is limiting the breath through the front and the sides so that I'm able to really fill up the back. Each new inhale, you'll feel the ribs expanding outward into the resistance. of deflation as the ribs come back in towards the body or the lungs. Not to overdo it, but just for clarity, if it benefits you, you could very slightly just flex, dome, or round through the middle of the back. Keep the breath filling up the back of the body and then deflating from the back. Just to help you feel where we're directing the movement. Just 2, 3 more. Remembering the idea here is to feel the movement, the expansion, and then the deflation of the ribs. Keeping the same work going, we're just going to change where we're directing the attention. Now we're going to go side to side, so it'll be left and right rather than back. So I'll start to do the breathing on my right side, and the idea here now is that I really want to fill the right side of the ribs up. So I might gently pull a little harder on the left side just to create that feeling of stable or limiting movement. But equally, it can also work to pull a little harder on the right side so that you've got more resistance to breathe into. So you can just play with both tensions. Just making sure that you're feeling into the right side and then trying to get those right ribs to move outward, rotating upward and away from the body. The inhales where you'll feel the expansion. And the exhale is that coming back home. 2 or 3 more times. Can the breath be in service of the movement? And of course, you're still breathing in all directions. You're still breathing into the back of the body. It's just where we place our attention. Okay. Last round, left side. Gently let go of that work, let go of the strap, we'll place it to one side. Done with it for the meantime. We're going to take a little detour and lie on our backs and just do some pelvis work. This is just kind of a screening move or a move to integrate what we're doing for most of the class of the upper body with the lower body. So you'll come to lie down and we're working on pelvic tilts. So as you lie on down, just get your head comfortable. Get your shoulders comfortable, either laying your hands on your body to soften the front of the shoulders, or maybe you reach your arms away from the hips, from the torso, and trying to rotate the palms so that they face up. With bent knees, just allow the feet to move slightly so that you find your best foundation, thinking about trying out different positions, feet away from the hips or closer to the hips, feet wider or narrower in stance. And let the back side of the body sink into the mat. Allow yourself to become heavy. And if you can, start to tune into the sacrum, the tailbone, the bony feeling of pushing down into the back of the pelvis. And as we move through our pelvic tilts, what's useful to think about is the sacrum sort of mimicking the movement of a rocking chair, the legs of a rocking chair. So you'll get this slow, soft rocking forwards and back feeling. If it benefits you at this point, take your hands and place them on the front of the pelvis. I'll do it to sort of emphasize or over-exaggerate the movement. And imagine that this pelvic unit is like the rocking chair, rocking forwards and back. You're going to use the pressure pushing down into the feet to help the pelvis tilt. And forwards and back. Back and forth. What we might scan through here is how our lower back feels. As the pelvis tips back in space, it's like the tailbone is reaching forwards or scooping up towards the nose. The lower back is flattening down to the floor, and you're really pushing down more into the top of the sacrum that's closest to the spine, part of the sacrum. And then slowly, can you begin to move the other way? So the pelvis begins to rock forwards, the tailbone drops down or lifts up towards the shoulders. The front of the pelvis tips towards the knees. And it feels like the back is arching away from the floor. Back and forth. I'm not sure if the mic is picking up my tummy grumbles, but this is often the case for me when I start to move through the pelvis, is that there's this feeling now of the whole abdominal organ unit just getting stretched and then a little compressed. And I'm just going to set this up now with the visualization of a clock. So as the pelvis is rocking back and forth, it might be useful to visualize the space just above your belly button as 12 o'clock on the face of a clock. And the space just below your pubic bone between your legs being 6 o'clock. And the idea here is that the sacrum, this tailbone unit, is plugged in the middle, like where the hands are. And it's just gently nodding between these 2 points, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Posterior, back, anterior, front. Back flattens down onto the floor, back arches away from the mat. Changing the tilt, but still in the pelvis. Now we go from side to side. So using this clock analogy, you're thinking about 3 and 9 o'clock. Hands on the pelvis for feedback. I tend to find it useful to visualize how a seesaw works. So as one side drops down, the other side lifts up. And this is the work that you're going to try and find through the pelvis. If this is totally new to you, I'd encourage you to think about your knees as well, and nearly pulling one knee back into the hip as you reach and lengthen the other knee towards the ceiling, and then switching sides. And as you're monitoring the front of the pelvis, do you feel one side dropping down towards the floor, maybe moving back from your hands, while the other side is pushing up into your hands? And if you're able to, over time, try and limit the movements through the knees, so it feels like the knees are just staying still, and this movement is subtle, but it's one side of the pelvis dropping down while the other side lifts up. Tipping, tilting, 9 to 3, side to side. the same time down. Seesaw-like movement. Last pelvic tilt's about the hike. So what I encourage you to do is just move your hands up slightly to hands on top of the ilium, on top of the pelvis. It's kind of the place where if you wanted to look bossy, you'd put your hands. And now this is same side work, so same side. So think about one side of your pelvis hiking up to the same side of the ribs. What we want to limit here now is this up and down like feeling, and it's going to be side to side, so a swing. So you don't want to feel the pressure in the hands change too much. You'll just feel one side of the pelvis kind of crunch, hike or pull up to the same side ribs, and then you'll swing like a pendulum the pelvis to the other side, hiking one hip up towards ribs. Using this clock visualization again, you're kind of anchoring to this 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock, or 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock. So it's just side to side. Just while you're doing this the last few times, just come back to what it might feel like to breathe consciously into the ribs. You've got the feedback of the floor behind you, so I invite a few breaths into the back space of the ribs. And then finally, you're just letting go of any structured sense of moving the pelvis and just letting the pelvis integrate with the legs in any way that feels yummy for you. Sometimes circles feel nice, or just some general movements. Winding out, but still inviting playful curiosity around what's happening here. Awesome. And then we're going to bring ourselves up into a seat, and we're going to do this by sliding our legs long. Now this can feel hard and really awkward, so just do your best and you'll be where you're at and you can keep working on it. So you're going to push the heels down into the floor. And then start to reach the arms, first just up towards the ceiling, fingertips pointing towards the sky. Keep the heels pressing down, and just periodically bring your attention back into the heels. And what I'd like you to play with at first is the feeling of what it's like to reach the arms up towards the ceiling. So it sort of feels like the shoulder blades are pulling away from the floor. And then you'll allow the arm bones to fall back into the shoulder sockets. So the shoulder blades come back down, and there's just a gentle feeling of sort of the arms falling back in space. So it's not out wide, it's just kind of like a plugging in position. And we'll just repeat this a few times. So you reach away up to the ceiling, and then plug the arms back down. Reach away, and plug on down. So from here, we're going to try and curl up. So the arms are going to begin to kind of drop down towards the toes. And as this happens, the head's going to pick up, tucking in towards the chest. Keep now thinking about reaching the arms away, so shoulder blades slide along the side, and you're just going to do your best to push down, curl up. Oh, my feet lift. Maybe you can keep yours plugged, and you'll bring yourself up to sit. Let go of any kind of posture here, and just round or bend the knees. And now we're just kind of going to reset and grab our resistance band again. We're integrating the shoulder feeling now with the torso. So take your resistance band. We're going long legs, but you don't need to actually have straight knees. So I tend to work a little better with a bit of a bend in my knees, so you just find what works for you. But we'll go feet a little bit wider, not a total wide leg stance, but not a narrow stance, so somewhere in between. And this is just to start to give us something to resist our resistance band around. So we're going to work in a diagonal direction. So the shoulder that we're focusing on, you're going to hook the opposite leg. I'll start saying lefts and rights, but you can just do whatever side you actually want. But I've got my resistance band around my right arm, so I'm going to hook it around my right foot. Now, this one is when a looped resistance band does work quite well. So you might find that you want to tie up your band so that you've got a lot of tension on it, and just bring yourself sort of a small amount of stretch. Okay, so find the placement where you're able to kind of reach again. So think about the arm reaching up to the ceiling, but this time you're going to reach your hand down to your foot and grab your band. And the idea here is that you'll just keep playing around until you find the right tension for you, but you start in this sort of lengthened, twisted position. And again, the feet are just anchoring you, so you can bend your knees if you need this work, but you're rotating over towards the opposite foot, in my case the left. And the idea here is that we're going to bring a pull in. You can use your left hand on the floor or on the thigh, but gently think about what we were doing before when we were plugging the arm bone back in towards the socket. So start to pull the arm bone back in space. This also feels like the shoulder blades start to hug the ribs. And then you're just going to bend into your elbow and pull. I need to give myself a little more slack. And give yourself enough slack so that you can bring your elbow sort of by your waist. And then you're going to let it go again. Allow the arm to extend and round. And this time we're going to turn it into a little twist. So the left hand's framing just outside of the hip. And you can curl and round over. And then you're kind of pulling yourself out of it. So start by plugging the arm bone back, derotating through the spine, bend the elbow, and you might just gently twist off towards the right. And the whole idea is to just start to feel like you're toned, that there's work going along in the back part of the shoulder. And just repeat a few more times. Don't just let go in this release part. You're trying to keep the tension on as much as you can as you round and twist over. And then pull the arm back into the socket, bend the elbow, and gently looking over to the other side. Just a few more times on this side. As you pull up, push down with the left hand, lift the chest, grow really tall, rotate over to the right, hug the elbow into the body, and just keep adjusting. Nice. Take that lesson and just apply it to the other side. We'll do about 5. Play with the tension that you need. You just gobble up your strap for more and you let it go for less. Pull with the arm, slide the shoulder along the back of the body, bend into the elbow, rotate away from the leg. Slowly you're rotating into the resistance now. So you feel like you're kind of being pulled forwards, but don't let go. Keep the resistance on. You know what you're doing here now. Feel that you can play. And if you need to feel the back of your shoulder to check that you are on, that you're doing something, it's all just about connecting there. Do one more if you're into it. And then we're just going to do a bit more of a kind of cleaner row with the arms. So again, we'll just use our feet to hook the strap around, but you could even hook it around a pole or a couch leg, so you really get a sense of being able to have some space to pull into. What I'm going to do is bring both feet together, hook the strap around and essentially visualize kind of what you would do on a rowing machine. So you've got something to pull into, and we're just going to do the same thing. This time, rather than a twist, it'll just be a forward fold, and you can bend your knees as much as you need. So we come on out, the slack starts to find us, you're rounding, and then plug the arms back into the socket, slide the shoulder blades down, bend the elbows, lifting and unhinging as well. There's this ability maybe to puff the chest, pulling through, and even just go a little more. We're thinking about the shoulders and the back, so just do your best to really reach back with the shoulder blades. Good, and then not letting go and collapsing, but just resisting. Begin to round forwards again. You'll get the feeling. We'll just do it maybe 3 or 4 more times. Take your time. And organize the torso and the shoulders. Feel that you're reaching back. Finding the work along the back of the shoulder. Nice. Come on out when you're ready. We're going to come into a tabletop pose. If you need some support under your knees, feel free to roll up maybe a towel, a blanket, or pop a pillow under your knees. I'm going to grab my timer here, and we're going to go for sort of 3 minutes of just shoulder loading. You can rest as you need. I'll progress it. So set yourself up in a comfortable-ish position. You're just checking that your knees feel okay and your wrists feel okay. Hands are underneath the shoulders. Think about this rowing move that we were doing, or the move of reaching up towards the ceiling when we were on our back, and just play with it for a few times just in this position. So how does it differ? What we tend to feel is rather than pulling the arms back, it's like the torso's sinking down, and then the torso's pushing away from the hands. So you're connecting here. It's not quite a cat and cow. It's not the spine extending forwards and doming back. It's like a sliding of the shoulder blades along the back of the body. And what we refer to this movement as is retraction. This is like the row, the pulling back, and protraction, the pushing, maybe a little bit of doming through the middle of the back, not heaps. But the feeling that the shoulder blades are maybe sliding more along the sides of the torso or up to the armpits. If you need to have a rest at this point, do get your hands off the floor and just give them a little roll in the wrists. We're going to keep the loading going by tucking the toes and lifting the knees. Now here, the main thing is just that you're hovering more weight over the knees, so you can really do whatever you want. If you wanted to kind of swing and play, shift forwards and back. What I'm going to do is just keep thinking about this protraction, retraction. So the gentle movement of the shoulder blades as they slide along the back of the body. Remembering it's not your cat and cow, though it might feel like it. So you might even play with a few cat and cows in this lifted knee position. I know it can feel really hard, so take a break as you need and just come back into it. Use the breath space to help you stay a little longer. Maybe you breathe into that left side for a breath, then the right side, then the back. Time passes. Have a rest if you need, or if you're into it, we walk our legs long now so it's a plank position. I don't know if it's just because I spend so much time in plank, but this one feels a little easier than the knees lifted. So find your stacked position. And can you do the same doming pushing, dropping, arching. Again, the whole idea is just that we're loading up the shoulders. So if you just want to move around, you can even bend into your elbows, have a bit of a break, shift the weight. You might feel like you want to come back into a down-ish dog, and then back into your plank. We've got maybe another 30 seconds of just doing the weight bearing. Okay, have a rest when you're ready by dropping the knees and pushing the hips back towards the heels. As you do so, just grab your slidey plate or pop a sock on your hands, whatever works. Before we go into any more though, just soften down, have a rest. Okay. So where you're at the moment, we'll call it a child's pose, and the main thing that I just want you to take at the moment is that this kind of pose is very much hips to heels, so you've got quite a closed space here. And then where we'll move to is some version of this, and maybe some version of a melting heart, and again it's just about the legs. So in a melting heart, we've got the hips above the knees rather than hips to heels. So what I'd just like you to know as we move into the sliding work is that you can go anywhere from hips to heels to hips above knees. I'll start us in the hips to heels position and we'll go right hand on the plate. So think about this extended child's pose, so reach the left arm forwards. Head's going to kind of follow along, it will figure out where it needs to be, but you can have your elbow of the left hand down, you can have your elbow of the left hand lifted, and bring this clock face back into mind rather than just the pelvis. Now you are in the center of the clock. So if you were going to reach up with the right hand, you'd be reaching to 12 o'clock. If you did that semicircle sweep down beside you, arm out to the same side is that 3 o'clock, and then you're down in the 6th position. And then what you can do is cross over the body, so you're reaching towards maybe that 9-ish position. And just know that you can explore wherever you can go, really. So all the way up, all the way down. And just spend a moment sliding around on the surface, reaching into all these yummy spots. And you can start with the reach hips to heels. Or maybe over time as you go, especially as we cross over the body, you might benefit from lifting the hips away and stacking hips over knees a bit more. Take your time doing this. And then switch around when you're ready. Now, I'm just trusting that you'll find your nice position, so either stay hips to heels, go hips over knees, or somewhere in between, and then just do that same work of the opposite side. Got to be a little careful with my mic, so it might look a little weird, but just go with what you feel rather than how I move. Keep doing that as long as you like, but for now we'll wind on out for the class. And we're going to come into more held stuff. So this is the stretchy stuff. Less loading and just more kind of being, feeling. So we're going to come into a similar version of thread the needle. We were in there a bit actively, now we'll do it a bit more passively. Again, I'll just kind of have a timer, so we'll probably do about 3 minutes on each side, or you just stay as long as you feel comfortable. So grab something that can sort of support your torso so that you don't have to do so much work through the legs and the hips. And you're just going to bring your bolster or your prop in between your legs, and you'll just adjust as you go. Have one block also set up where you imagine your head might be. So if you were to lie on down, you can just have that extra pillow for your head. So you're going to come into some version of a thread the needle. We'll start with the right side again. So it's going to be the right side reaching over to the left. But this time you're like laying yourself down on top. So slide the left arm forwards like we did before. Reach the right arm through and across, and the back of the right shoulder, maybe the right ear, is going to find its way over to your prop, and just adjust now that you've got some feedback about your size, where you are. And then lots will happen here all at once, so just settle on in. The idea is to keep reaching the right arm, the arm that's crossing over the body. So sometimes even a little pull of the arm might feel nice, or just anchoring the left hand on top of the right. And if it works for you, you feel that you need to kind of counterbalance, counter-rotate, then you'll take the left hand, maybe you'll take it to your hip, or behind the body, finding the front of the right hip. And it's up to you, just stay soft, or use your prop to keep kind of rotating into, using your arm to push back into your prop, rotating over towards the left. In this twisted position, come back to the breathing spaces, the backs and the sides, where it feels easy to breathe into. And where do you feel that the breath is really kind of elbowing its way in the space? It's making room. Final few breaths. And slowly wind out. And you're just going to come straight into the other side if it works for you. Otherwise, anything that you feel that you need to do on your way out. So the left hand will push back down into the floor. And as you de-rotate, if you'd like to reach the right elbow away, reaching back. Right hand finds the floor. We're now just switching sides. It'll feel different on this side most likely, so approach the pose just with the same amount of curiosity, the same sense of, oh, what's going to happen? Fill up any spaces that you need. So my feeling was the head just wasn't quite ready to go as low on this side. All those same options of top hand pushing or plugging down the bottom arm. Maybe the top arm spirals around, so just that weight shift starts to move back. Keep exploring your body here. Where does your attention go? Final few breaths. Top arm, if it's hooked behind you, will plug back down into the floor so you can push on up. Let's just do one more pose. It'll be another held pose. It's one-sided. We'll hold it for about 5 minutes. So this is a supported back bend. I'll use my 2 blocks for the back bend part, and I'll just use the bolster for my knees. Again, I'm going to use my timer, so you might see me with my hourglass on my body. You don't need to do that. So how we set this up is knowing that in a moment we're going to be lying on our backs and we're going to have some stuff under our back to kind of prop us up into this lift. Again, there's head support and then there's mid-back support. Everyone's a little different on what they like, but what I'll do is set myself up with my mid-back block a little lower than my head block. So my head's going to be a bit higher. I'm aiming for my mid-back block to go somewhere in between the shoulder blades. And for some, they really benefit from having it on that narrower side so that it's just the spine that feels that it's anchored on the block and the shoulder blades are falling off each side. But whatever works for you, I tend to like the support. Okay. So you'll spin on round. You'll think about your lower back at the beginning. If you kind of need to use these pelvic tilts that we did at the start of class to help you find a comfortable position, it's good. You don't even need the knee support if you don't like it, but I've got the bolster, so I'm doing it. And then you'll just come to lie on down. Just seeing if I not wanted something over my feet. Why not? So I'm tucking my feet in so I don't get cold. Adjust as you go down, so if you're able to have your hands under the bottom of the block, as you drop down onto your forearms, just gives you some space to adjust. And then you'll find a position where you're lying down and the head's resting on something. Lots to think about here. What I'd like you to find is a sense of the shoulders softening. So if the easiest thing for you to do is to take your hands on your body, that's great. What I would prefer, or what we're working on with a private client, is getting the arms to rotate out. So same thing as I said before at the beginning of the class, there's a feeling of the arms reaching away from the body, and the palms are facing up so that the arm bones are rotating away, and there's a feeling of like it's upward. And this might just allow the shoulder blades to fall back in space. And there's just like a dropping down into the floor. Now you'll know what doesn't feel right for you. I can only make suggestions, but try the mid-back block a little higher, or maybe a little lower. Prop the mid-back block more if you want more height. Or maybe even dropping the head block down slightly will give you the sense that you need.